Hello there, YouTube crew. I'm the real Dill, and it's time to rank the first Mission Impossible. Now, as discussed in the previous video, link in the description below, we're going to be starting with directorial style, and the first one up on it is tone. Now, this is the smallest scale movie of the franchise. And it has a grounded sensibility to the narrative, but Brian De Palma wasn't afraid to add in these fantastical elements to the story, to the character, and he really understood that this franchise, above all else, needs to be fun. And so, great foundation for the series, award 3 points. And next up is mood. Ethan Hunt is introduced to the audience for the first time here. And by the close of Act 1, we know he's a highly skilled individual who's desperate to clear his name and haunted by the deaths of his team. Much of the aesthetics of the movie pack on the suspicion and direness of the situation. But Tom Cruise in this role has so much charisma and cockiness to balance out the film. It's a great showcase of his abilities as a leading man. So Brian De Palma masterfully gets across this tone of the movie, and he gets forth the right mood for the audience. However, there is one big kickback. There are no shootouts nor big fight sequences. And while I think that works really well for this movie, that is not what we as an audience have come to expect of the Mission Impossible franchise. And because of that, because it doesn't quite meet the expectations of the audience, what we're desiring for, I have to dock a single point. So 2 points to mood. Now looking at score, the composer of this was Danny Elfman, and this is like right at his heyday, maybe the start of his heyday. So you know it's good at worst. And I would say, I'd wager it's probably the best of the first three movies. I think the latter movies may have better scores. I'm not quite sure. We'll find out as this goes. Maybe the third one gives a run for its money because I know it's pretty good. But right now, I'd say it's probably the best of those three. And then a little, maybe at par, maybe a little subpar to the fourth through sixth. And so I'll award it 2 points. Then there's the title sequence. It begins, of course, with a match lighting the fuse. Now, this is done subjectively. What I mean by that is it's not a real match lighting a real fuse in the actual workings of the movie, in the reality of the movie. This is something that's just subjective. It's not objective. And that's pretty much the normative, right? Then we see large individual credits with a scrolling background, photo negative effects, super quick cutting on characters, all good stuff. But it ends with a blue title card. You gotta go red, or at least, fiery orange, right? -1 point. And finally, cinematography. De Palma's classic Dutch angles add so much intention and do a lot to elevate performance and atmosphere and getting those feelings of desperation and suspicion. There's also his trademark split diopter shots, which are fun, and he gives us tons of POV and profile shots. There's even false walls to allow more freedom with camera movement. This is a stylish movie made by a master. 3 points. On to character. Ethan is introduced to us as a young point man. He's not yet leading a team. He's just coming into his prime. And this movie is about him establishing who exactly he is. He's not yet coolly confident. This guy is cocky.
Why not? You gave Job 125.
He's also playful, determined, intelligent.
Oh my God, of course.
We see that he's emotionally vulnerable, yet he has control of himself. But arguably, what's most important is that he's caring. He cares for the well-being of his team and of innocents. He does not accept casualties of war. Also importantly, he is a gambler. And even though he's not yet the combat and vehicle expert super spy he will become, I've got to give this turn 3 points. Moving on to team. It's the first movie, but we get two teams. And there is a decent amount of time given to the first team. Even got Emilio Estevez,
The Mighty Duckman, I swear to God!
in there to add to the shock factor for those 90 audiences who loved him, and for audiences of all time that love him.
I was like, Emilio!
And we're also arguably getting the most dynamic IMF team and rounded out team of the franchise, since it has traitors within it and a love interest within it. The second team introduces us to the lovable Luther and has a violent hothead with mad chopper skills. Gotta give 3 points. Now let's look at the boss. Kittredge is a favorite, and I'm so glad he's coming back to the franchise. What's unique about him is how much he goes into the field and with a head-on approach. You gotta respect it. He's got this air of self-righteousness, yet he'll immediately cover up a blunder that happens on his watch even banishing a guy to the cold at the drop of a hat or knife. Now to the antagonist. Krieger is a fun presence and a good secondary antagonist or goon, that type of level. And then Kittredge, while he's the boss, he is an antagonistic force, right? But it's really about Jim Phelps here. John Voight plays the mentor that's a secret villain and does it so well. He's cunning, deceptive, he appears as caring, but is ruthlessly brutal. He's tasted unchecked power and can no longer stomach protocols and oversight. He's a strong mirror for Ethan, but he's not the greatest challenge. Ethan has him about in checkmate before the two even reunite in Act 3, so 2 points.
Those damn Gideons.
Neutral characters. Here we have Max and her crew, and Max is such a fantastic presence in this. She's an arms dealer who just cares about money, even to the expense of great casualties. And she's very willing to backstab and give up information if it benefits her. And most importantly, she draws out interesting aspects and behavior from Ethan that we might not have seen otherwise. 3 points. On to conflict. Just how impossible is the impossible mission? A disavowed Ethan who's just seen his team wiped out one by one in front of his eyes sets out on a dangerous gambit to clear his name. He's got to find and hustle a dangerous arms dealer, then break into the CIA headquarters to retrieve the knock list, which contains the names of every operative in the field, so that he can draw out the mole who betrayed him, yet with the stipulation that he cannot allow the knock list out into the open. All while he's struggling with who to trust. I love it. 3 points. Now the stunts. We see Tom outrun a literal ton of water set free by an explosion. The guy even learned how to do sleight of hand magic. And while the train stuff is on a soundstage, and by the way, that is very difficult to tell. I mean, it's kind of like, it's very movie magic that you can't really tell while they're out in the open. Now, once you get into the tunnel stuff, okay, yeah, that's very clearly a soundstage. But, there's an aesthetic to it. There's still impressive stunts going on with this. But come on, it's all about the vault scene. It's so iconic. Tom put pennies in his shoe to get the balance just right for this. Even if Tom had only done the stunt in the vault scene, it's so iconic, gotta give 3 points. The set pieces. Might as well start with the vault since we're already talking about it. We get our introduction to the new team members alongside a brief about how their goal is so impossible.
Relax, Luther. It's much worse than you think.
But with the promise,
We're going to do it.
then we jump right into the action and learn the plan as it unfolds. It's great, it's exciting, you know this. But there's also the embassy in Prague where everything goes wrong because there's a mole. But it even goes wrong for the mole since
This whole operation was flawed.
so good. Brian De Palma is so in your face about it, but I guarantee you did not realize it until Ethan walks us around the room. And the train finale has such good stakes and folds to the action. It does not disappoint for the climax. 3 points. Ticking clocks. We start with stuff like Emilio being too slow to hack their authentication, and we get some good banter out of this. But the big one, of course, comes from the vault guy who, despite being poisoned, is determined to do his job on schedule, almost stopping the heist. Then there's also Max's attempt to upload the knock list, which has its own ticking clock with the tunnel. All good stuff, but it's not quite the super stakes that we get out of the ticking clocks in, say, 4 and 6. So, I'll give it 2.5 points. I make the rules here. On to the interpersonal conflicts. You've got Ethan digging into Emilio and gaslighting Krieger with magic. You've got the trust issues with Claire mixed with his romantic feelings. But the standout is Ethan pretending to buy into Jim's story while mining information from the guy. It's one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. And it's just two guys sitting across from each other playing mind games. 3 points. Story, and first up, narrative. After a mole hunt gone bad, disavowed IMF agent Ethan Hunt must do the impossible to clear his name and catch the real mole. He's got to charm Max to get funds for his own operation and ensure an audience with the mole, while also outmaneuvering Kittredge, but not too well so that there's a trail that the guy can follow, all while trying to determine if Claire was in on the betrayal. And all during this, he determines Luther can be trusted and that Krieger is a plant. I'm telling you, it's the perfect plot to introduce and showcase Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, to us, the audience. I mean, I don't get how so few people consider this if not the best, then the second best of the franchise. I mean, come on. 3 points. Character progression. Ethan, like a phoenix, rises from a simple point man to the legendary team leader that gets us packed in the theater. Enough said. 3 points. Romance. The romance here is quite reserved, but there is excellent chemistry going on. Now, there is a bit of De Palma's interest in the perverse because the romantic plot comes right up to the line of adultery. I really dig this dynamic, but, adultery is a sin, so 3 points minus 1, 2 points. Twists and turns. The mission that gets his teammates systematically killed was an internal mole hunt the whole time, but the mole has already set into motion Ethan's frame. And instead of going in quietly or simply running away, Ethan saves the buyer of the fake goods from getting busted and promises her the real goods so that he can get whoever betrayed him. Turns out, Claire didn't actually die. And Jim didn't die either. Guess what? They're both baddies, but hey, it's done so well. 3 points. Now the resolution. Ethan gets his guy, escapes a bad relationship, clears his name, and even gets Luther put back on the good list. It ends with him deciding not to return to the IMF because...
I just don't know why I'd be doing it.
But then in a callback to the first mission brief, we see the hook land on him. Excellent ending, met immediately by that great theme song, 3 points. On to the final category of mythos. How is the legend of Ethan Hunt used? As I said before, Ethan doesn't begin already as the legend, but he becomes one by the end of it. And that's a fact even if we were only counting the Langley stuff. 3 points. Spy gear. We of course have masks. Still do not know how they pulled off this shot. It's movie magic. There's magnetic climbers. Can't forget
your mission, Jim, should you choose to accept it.
And the self-destructing brief. The camera glasses used throughout. The gum is a personal favorite of mine.
Hasta lasagna, don't get any on you.
And that pheromone stuff with the special tracking glasses. 3 points. Locations and infiltrations. Prague with its embassy, and there's also the restaurant Ethan escapes from. And don't forget Max's apartment. Then, of course, the CIA headquarters in Langley and its impossible vault. They've got downtime in London and a train on its way to Paris with a beautiful countryside. 3 points. Disavowed. This movie starts the disavowed trope in the franchise. But not only is Ethan disavowed, he also recruits the disavowed. Extra point, 4 points. Fake outs. I've already spoken about the secret second team in Prague, so what I want to highlight here is Jim's false death. It's so obvious, right? But I guarantee you'll never notice on the first viewing because you're so balled in. Man, I love it. 3 points. And it's also cool that we get to see characters from the TV series in this one. Barnes is pretty cool and has a nice small role, but Jim Phelps essentially was the lead of the franchise before Tom came along. The original actor was asked to come back and reprise his role, which it would have been a second time reprising his role since the 80s reboot, but declined due to the character's turn toward villainy. And because of that kind of, betrayal to the source material, I've got to subtract a point. Total so far, 69.5 points. But now there's the bonus. See, this movie was released in the year that I was born, plus 2.5 points. And this movie quotes scripture several times, plus 5 points. That gives 77 points, I think. Yes. All right. How does it stack up in your book? I'm The Real Deal. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.